The Nile did not sleep at night. Even under the weight of 1,000 stars, the river breathed, slow, steady, eternal. Its surface shimmered like molten silver, carrying whispers from distant cataracts to the delta's embrace. Along the darkened banks, a fragrance drifted, subtle yet impossible to ignore. It was the scent of the blue lotus, the sacred flower of Egypt, blooming under the gaze of the moon. To the ancient Egyptians, the blue lotus was not merely a flower. It was a key, a delicate living key to unlock the boundaries of the human mind. Its petals held the promise of visions, its aroma the power to draw one's spirit toward the gods. In temple reliefs, priests are shown offering lotus blossoms to Osiris, their hands reverent, their eyes lowered. In the halls of Hathor's worship, the flower is carved above doorways, a silent blessing to those who enter seeking love, joy, or transcendence. On festival nights, servants gathered the blossoms in woven reed baskets, their fingertips stained with the pollen's faint gold. The petals were steeped in jars of sweet date wine, left to rest until the drink absorbed the flower's soul. One sip was said to slow the heart's worries, to soften the edges of thought, to make the air itself shimmer. Music would seem deeper, the flicker of torches brighter, and the Nile's ancient song, the soft slap of water on stone, would grow as clear as a voice beside you. Greek historian Herodotus wrote of such banquets, where guests sat on low cushioned seats, garlands of lotus draped around their necks, goblets in hand. Archaeologists have found residue in ancient vessels, alkaloid traces from the blue lotus, confirming that the tales were more than myth. The flower's influence was woven into Egypt's rituals, its medicine, even its courtship. Tonight, the palace was alive with such a feast. Torches painted the courtyard in gold and shadow. Musicians plucked the strings of the lyre, their melodies spiraling upward into the night air. At the center, a shallow pool reflected the moon, its surface scattered with lotus blooms like stars adrift in water. Nobles leaned close to speak in low voices, their words softened by wine and flower. Somewhere beyond the walls, the river carried their laughter away, blending it with its endless murmur. And in the shadows of the colonnade, the priests prepared. The blue lotus was more than decoration. It was the bridge they would walk upon tonight, across the threshold between the seen and the unseen. The air grew heavy with its perfume. The world slowed, as if the very night was inhaling. And perhaps the gods were too. The courtyard hummed with life. Somewhere in the distance, the faint roll of the Nile reached the ears of those gathered, a reminder that every heartbeat in Egypt belonged in some way to the river. In the center of the feast, servants moved with deliberate grace, carrying tall, slender jars of golden brown wine. But these were not ordinary wines. Their hue seemed deeper, their scent layered with something both floral and intoxicating. This was the wine of the blue lotus, steeped for days, sometimes weeks, until the essence of the flower merged entirely with the sweetness of fermented dates and barley. The first sip was a greeting, gentle, almost shy, brushing the tongue with notes of honey and river bloom. But soon after, a warmth spread, not from the stomach, but from the very edges of the mind. Colors deepened. The embroidered gold threads on a noble's robe seemed to catch and hold the firelight as if alive. The music of the lyre no longer came from a single corner of the courtyard, but from everywhere at once, wrapping the listener in its embrace. Scholars have long debated whether the blue lotus was used purely for pleasure or for spiritual journeys. In the tomb of Tutankhamun, garlands of the flower were found draped across the young king's body, as though to guide him into the afterlife. On temple walls in Karnak, priests are shown holding lotus blooms to their noses before addressing the statues of the gods. These were not idle gestures, they were invitations. As the night deepened, conversation softened into murmurs. A noble woman leaned back against a cushion, her fingers trailing idly through the cool water of the lotus pool beside her. She closed her eyes and smiled, not the smile of amusement, but of someone standing at the edge of a dream. Across from her, an old priest watched quietly, recognizing the look. He had seen it in initiates who drank the wine before entering the temple's inner sanctum, where visions came like dawn breaking through mist. By now the air was thick with mingled aromas, roasted duck, spiced lentils, incense of myrrh and frankincense, yet the perfume of the lotus cut through them all, sweet and unyielding. It was as though the flower demanded not just attention, but surrender. Outside the walls, the Nile carried on, black and endless, its waters reflecting a scatter of stars. And somewhere beneath those waters, in stories whispered by fishermen, dwelled spirits who favored the lotus, spirits who might, on nights like this, drift silently into the hearts of those who dared to drink its wine. Beyond the laughter of the courtyard, beyond the glow of torches and the shimmer of wine, there was another world, hidden, silent and waiting. Past the carved gates, where the sandstone walls rose high enough to hide the stars, the temple of Hathor prepared for its midnight rite. Few who attended the feast would ever step into that place. Fewer still would return unchanged. The air inside was cooler, touched with the faint dampness of ancient stone. Shadows gathered in the recesses, broken only by the soft light of oil lamps. The smell of the blue lotus lingered here as well, but it was different now, deeper, more commanding, as if the flower had shed its gentle mask and revealed its true nature. In the center of the temple, a low altar stood draped with linen. Upon it lay an offering, garlands of fresh blue lotus, their petals catching the flicker of flame. Beside them, shallow bowls held wine so dark it was almost black, infused with the essence of the flower. This was not for pleasure, it was for crossing. The priests moved in near silence, their linen robes whispering as they walked. Each held a lotus bloom close to the face, inhaling its fragrance in slow, measured breaths. In those moments, their eyes seemed to change, pupils widening, the focus shifting inward, as though they were turning their gaze away from the world of stone and toward another place entirely. Hieroglyphs on the temple walls spoke of what was to come. They told of the field of reeds, the eternal land beyond death's door, and of the gods who waited there. They warned that the path was narrow, that the heart must be lighter than the feather of Maat, and that the mind must be open to visions given by the divine. The blue lotus was their guide. It was the key, the compass, and the vessel. The chief priest approached the altar. In his hands, a golden cup reflected the lamplight in trembling waves. He dipped it into the bowl, drawing out the lotus wine. The cup was lifted to the lips, and with a slow drink, the journey began. Around him, the other priests followed, their voices joining in a low chant, words older than the walls themselves. And then, the air changed. The scent of lotus thickened until it seemed to have weight, pressing gently upon the skin. The flame of each lamp bent and swayed as if stirred by an unseen wind. Somewhere far off, a drum began to beat, steady, patient, like a second heartbeat beneath the chest. Eyes closed, breaths slowed. The boundaries between flesh and spirit began to thin. Beyond the walls, the Nile flowed on, unknowing, uncaring. But here, in this hidden heart of stone, the priests walked a bridge only they could see. A bridge made not of wood or rope, but of blue petals and sacred breath. The moment the final chant faded into the air, a silence descended. Not the absence of sound, but the deep, living stillness of a night that listens. The blue lotus had done its work. Its scent hung in the temple like a veil, blurring the lines between breath and dream. Eyes closed, the priests felt the ground shift beneath them, though their bodies remained still. It was not stone underfoot now, but something softer, warmer, as though they stood upon a field of endless petals. The air was no longer the cool breath of sandstone halls. It shimmered, golden and heavy, like sunlight filtered through amber. The first vision came quietly, the Nile, but not as it was. Its waters glowed faintly, and in its depths moved shapes both familiar and strange. Crocodiles with eyes like jewels, fish with scales that glimmered like beaten gold. On the far bank, reeds swayed, each tipped with a light that pulsed gently, like a heartbeat. From that light stepped figures. They were tall, robed in white, their faces hidden behind masks of falcons, cows, and jackals, the forms of gods. Hathor's gentle presence flowed like music in the air, her cow's ears crowned with a disk of the sun. Osiris stood silent, green-skinned, his crook and flail crossed over his chest. Their eyes, human and yet not, saw directly into the hearts of those who dared to look back. A priest stepped forward in this vision, the blue lotus still in his hand. Hathor reached out, and where her fingers touched the petals, they burst into light. The priest felt warmth surge through him, washing away the heaviness of flesh, leaving only clarity, joy, and a strange weightlessness. For others, the visions were more personal. One saw his ancestors waiting for him on the field of reeds, their hands raised in greeting. Another found himself walking a path lined with lotus flowers taller than he was, each bloom whispering secrets in a language he somehow understood. The youngest among them saw only the sky, vast, starlit, and endless, and felt for the first time that he belonged to something greater than his own life. The blue lotus had opened a door, and beyond it lay not a single truth, but as many truths as there were souls to see them. Slowly the chant began again, softer now, like the tide drawing back to the sea. One by one the visions faded, not abruptly, but like mist lifting under the morning sun. The priests opened their eyes to find themselves once more within the stone embrace of the temple. Yet the world was not the same. Nothing ever was after crossing the bridge of petals.
The visions ebbed away like the receding tide, slow and reluctant to leave. The priests, still seated within the temple's embrace, felt the cool stone return beneath their hands, the grounded weight of their bodies anchoring them once more to the mortal world. Yet something lingered, a subtle warmth in the chest, a clarity in the mind, as if the breath of the blue lotus had left a part of itself behind. They opened their eyes to the flicker of oil lamps, the soft crackle of their flames. The scent of the flower was fading now, but its echo still clung to their senses, like a melody remembered long after the music has stopped. Outside, the night had deepened. The Nile's song was slower, heavier, carrying with it the promise of the coming dawn. The chief priest rose first, his movements unhurried, as though he carried the weight of another realm upon his shoulders. He looked once more at the altar, at the withering petals now curled inward. The bridge closed for tonight. But he knew, as they all did, that the bridge was never truly gone. It lay within them now, ready to be found again when the gods willed it. Beyond the temple walls, the sounds of the feast drifted faintly. Laughter, the clink of cups, the distant pulse of a drum. Life continued, loud and bright, as it always did. The priests stepped out into the moonlit courtyard, their eyes adjusting to the glow of the torches. The air out here was thick with the sense of roasted meat and spiced bread, a sharp contrast to the cool sanctity they had left behind. One by one, they joined the edges of the gathering, blending into the shadows. Tonight, their role had been to walk between worlds. Now, it was to walk among their people once more. Somewhere in the crowd, a nobleman raised a goblet of wine to his lips, unaware that the very flower that graced his drink had, in another corner of the palace, opened doors to eternity. As the moon climbed higher, the music swelled, and the feast beckoned with its golden light. The priests exchanged quiet glances. They knew the sacred and the worldly were not so far apart. Sometimes the same petals that led one to the gods could also lead another into the heart of earthly joy. And so, with the scent of blue lotus still ghosting the air, they stepped into the celebration under the stars.
The temple's shadow faded behind them,
replaced by the warm glow of the palace courtyard. Here, the air was alive, thick with the scent of roasting meats, honey-glazed figs, and the faint tang of fermenting wine. Torches blazed along the colonnades, their flames swaying in rhythm with the night breeze, casting golden light over alabaster statues and painted pillars. The Pharaohs' banquet was no mere gathering. It was an orchestrated symphony of sights, scents, and sounds, designed to remind all present of Egypt's wealth and divine favor. At the center of the courtyard, long tables were set with polished copper platters, heaped high with roasted duck, spiced lamb, and bowls of lentils simmered with cumin. Loaves of bread, baked from the softest emmer wheat, lay in neat stacks beside dishes of honey and thick cream. Servants moved silently, their linen garments whispering as they poured deep red wine into goblets carved from gold and lapis lazuli. Beside the wine, jugs of barley beer, the drink of both peasants and kings, stood chilled in clay jars. But these were no ordinary drinks. Some had been infused with herbs, a mixture whispered to open the mind and heighten the senses, a tradition known only to the court and its most trusted guests. Music rose from a corner of the courtyard, the gentle plucking of the lyre, the deep pulse of hand drums, the breathy call of the reed flute. The sound wove itself into the air, carrying with it the promise of a night that would be remembered long after the torches burned out. Above it all, the stars shone like cold fire, scattered across the deep indigo sky. The Nile lay just beyond the palace walls, its slow, eternal current glinting under the moon. Tonight, the Pharaoh's feast was not just for the living. Rumor had it that certain guests, unseen by mortal eyes, would arrive before the night was over. The feast's pulse quickened as the musicians found a livelier rhythm. Drums thumped like a second heartbeat beneath the stars, and the delicate strings of the lyre danced atop that rhythm with playful energy. Into the open space at the center of the courtyard stepped the dancers, women draped in flowing linen, their skin dusted with gold powder that caught every flicker of torchlight. They moved like the river itself, fluid and winding, each step a curve, each turn a ripple. Anklets of tiny bronze bells chimed softly with every shift of weight, their sound weaving through the music like silver thread. Some carried long strips of dyed linen, red and deep blue, swirling them in arcs that painted the air with color. Others balanced copper trays of flickering oil lamps upon their heads, the flames never faltering even as their bodies spun. The crowd leaned forward, captivated. This was not mere entertainment, it was an offering of movement to the gods. Hathor, goddess of music and joy, was believed to watch over such performances, her unseen presence amplifying the grace and allure of every gesture. For the pharaoh, it was also a display of power, proof that Egypt's wealth could summon beauty itself to dance at his command. Children of the nobility clapped in rhythm, their laughter ringing like bright bells. Servants moved among the guests with trays of pomegranate seeds, fresh dates, and small cups of wine. The scent of cinnamon and roasting lamb filled the air, blending with the tang of wine-soaked lotus petals. As the dance reached its height, the lead performer stepped forward, her arms lifted high, and for a moment the courtyard seemed to still. The torches flared, the drums paused, and all eyes were upon her. Then, with a sudden flourish, she spun, and the bells at her ankles sang in a cascade of notes. The musicians followed, the rhythms swelling, pulling everyone present into its tide. By the time the final chord faded, the dancers were breathing hard, their faces shining with sweat and pride. The guests erupted in applause, and somewhere at the head of the table, the Pharaoh smiled, a small, knowing smile. The night was still young, and the feast had only just begun.
The feast flowed on, and with it came the games, small competitions designed to amuse the nobility and display their wit, agility, and luck. At one end of the courtyard, servants set up a table for the ancient game of Senate, its polished board inlaid with ivory squares, each marked with signs that whispered of fate. Two noblemen took their seats, the crowd gathering to watch as carved pieces, shaped like tiny cones and tall spindles, moved across the board with each throw of casting sticks. Senate was more than a game. In the old beliefs, it mirrored the soul's journey through the afterlife, navigating trials and blessings until it reached the field of reeds. Watching the match was like watching destiny itself unfold, and the laughter and wagers exchanged around the table did little to hide the underlying reverence for the ancient tradition. Elsewhere, a group of young nobles competed in a ring toss game, aiming for tall copper jars placed at varying distances. The winners were rewarded with small tokens, bracelets, necklaces of faience beads, gifts that were both playful and symbolic of favor in the court. In another corner, athletic contests took place, balancing on narrow beams, leaping over water basins, and even friendly bouts of wrestling on mats woven from papyrus reeds. The Pharaoh's guards joined in, their skill and discipline on full display, though they laughed and bowed with exaggerated humility whenever they bested a nobleman. Between the games, trays of food and drink continued to circulate. Guests tasted spiced chickpeas, roasted quail, and tiny pastries filled with figs and nuts. The air was loud with cheers, groans, and the warm roar of camaraderie. For all the splendor of gold and silk, there was an earthiness to these games, a reminder that even in the grandeur of the palace, joy was found in the simplest pleasures. A well-placed throw, a narrow victory, a shared laugh under the stars. As the games wound down and the laughter softened, a subtle shift spread across the courtyard. The music grew gentler, the drums fading to a low heartbeat, and in their place came the soft, resonant hum of a harp. Guests leaned back in their seats, cups of wine in hand, their eyes turning toward the far end of the courtyard, where a single figure stepped into the torchlight. He was an old man, his robe plain compared to the jeweled finery around him, yet his presence commanded attention. His hair was white, his voice low and steady, carrying easily over the hush. This was the Pharaoh's storyteller. keeper of tales both ancient and dangerous, stories not found on temple walls, but carried in memory, passed down from tongue to ear across generations. He began with the story of the river's birth, how the tears of the goddess Isis, shed for her lost husband Osiris, had filled the Nile, bringing life to the black soil. His words wove images so vivid that guests could almost see the silver river winding under a sky heavy with stars, smell the wet earth after the flood's retreat. But as the tale deepened, a different thread crept in, one less often spoken. He spoke of nights when the river ran silent and of shadows seen moving beneath its surface. Of a time long ago when a pharaoh invited a foreign seer to the court. This seer, it was said, could speak to the dead, drawing them across the veil for a single night's conversation. The storyteller paused then, letting the torches crackle in the quiet. The nobles shifted in their seats, the air thick with the weight of unasked questions. It was common knowledge that some pharaohs kept such mystics in their favor, but to hear it spoken aloud was rare and dangerous. Leaning forward, the old man's voice dropped to a near whisper. He told of a banquet where the air had turned colder than the night outside, where a guest had suddenly risen from his place, eyes wide, as if seeing someone who was not there. The pharaoh, he claimed, had smiled then, not in surprise, but in recognition. The tale ended without explanation, leaving the last words to hang in the air like the final note of a song. Guests murmured to one another, some shaking their heads, others glancing toward the palace's shadowed halls. The old man bowed deeply and stepped back into the darkness, leaving behind a silence that was somehow louder than applause. Somewhere, unseen in the shadows, someone laughed, soft, knowing. Whether it was a courtier amused by the story or something else entirely, no one could say. But the feast was far from over, and the night still had secrets to unveil.
The storyteller's final words still hung in the air when a servant in a dark linen robe slipped quietly into the courtyard. He carried no tray, no cup, only a small bronze gong which he struck once. The sound was deep, resonant, and it rolled through the gathering like a wave. Conversation stilled. All eyes turned toward the pharaoh. Seated on a carved ebony throne, the pharaoh lifted one hand. At the gesture, the musicians lowered their instruments, and the torches nearest the palace's inner hall flared as if fed by an unseen breath. From the shadows, 3 figures emerged, cloaked, hooded, their bare feet silent on the stone. In their hands they carried objects wrapped in linen, a tall carved staff, a shallow bowl, and a bundle of blue lotus flowers. These were the court's chosen mystics, men and women said to walk between the realms of the living and the dead. Their leader, an elderly woman with eyes as sharp as a falcon's, stepped forward to the center of the courtyard. With deliberate movements, she unwrapped the staff, revealing its head, the likeness of Anubis, jackal-headed guide of souls. The bowl was placed at her feet, and into it she poured a dark liquid that shimmered faintly in the torchlight,
a mixture of Nile water, crushed lotus petals, and wine steeped with desert herbs. As she stirred it, the scent rose, mingling with the cool night air until it seemed to fill every breath. The Pharaoh spoke then, his voice low but carrying. "We call upon those who walked before us. Let their words be heard once more." The mystics began to chant, not in the flowing speech of the court, but in an older tongue, harsh and strange to most ears. The rhythm of their voices was matched by a slow beating of a frame drum, deep and steady. The crowd leaned forward, some with fascination, others with unease. A wind stirred, though no breeze had touched the courtyard all night. The torches bent toward the center, their flames stretching as if drawn by something unseen. The old woman dipped the staff into the bowl, then lifted it, letting droplets fall onto the stone. Each drop hissed as if striking something hot. She spoke a name. The sound of it was unfamiliar, yet it seemed to carry weight, as though the air itself paused to listen. The drumbeat quickened. Somewhere in the depths of the palace, a door slammed, though no hand touched it. Several guests gasped. One young noble gripped his cup so tightly the wine spilled over. And then, for the briefest moment, the air in the center of the courtyard shimmered. It was not a form, not fully, more the suggestion of a figure, tall and robed, the outline shifting like smoke. No face could be seen, but the sense of presence was undeniable. The Pharaoh inclined his head, and the shimmer faded. The drumbeat slowed, the chants softened, and the mystic stepped back. No explanation was offered, none was needed. Wine was poured again, music cautiously resumed, but the mood had shifted. The guests spoke in quieter tones, glancing more often toward the shadows. Somewhere beyond the palace walls, the temple bells began to toll, the signal that another kind of rite, far older than the feast, was about to begin. The last notes of the court's music still lingered in the ears of the guests when the temple bells began to toll. Low, deep, and deliberate, the sound carried across the palace grounds, through the open courtyards, and out to the banks of the Nile. Even the river seemed to pause, its surface smoothing under the cool breath of the night. In the courtyard, conversation faltered. Those who knew the meaning of the bells fell silent. Those who did not looked around, sensing an unspoken shift in the air. The Pharaoh rose from his seat, his silhouette framed by the flickering torches. Without a word, he turned toward the inner gates, where a path of white limestone led away from the palace and into the shadow of the great temple. The guests who were permitted to follow moved quietly, their sandals whispering over the stone. Beyond the gates, the world changed. The laughter and warmth of the feast faded behind them, replaced by the cool gravity of the temple precinct. Towering pylons rose into the night, their carved surfaces catching the red-gold glow of oil lamps. Hieroglyphs danced in shadow as the flames trembled, telling stories older than the palace itself. Inside the forecourt, rows of columns loomed like a stone forest, each painted with scenes of gods and kings locked in eternal embrace.
The scent of burning myrrh and frankincense thickened the air, mingling with something more elusive, a sharp green note from desert herbs crushed and smoldering on bronze braziers. The smoke curled upwards in pale ribbons, twining together before vanishing into the darkness above. At the far end, the priests stood waiting. Their linen robes glowed faintly in the lamplight, and their eyes were lined with kohl that gave them an almost otherworldly intensity. One by one, they stepped forward, each carrying a small ceramic vessel. Inside, the resin and herbs smoldered, releasing clouds of fragrant smoke. The ritual had begun, and the night was no longer merely a night. It was a passage.
The first wisps of smoke curled through the great hole like living threads, pale against the darkness between the towering columns. Myrrh burned slow and sweet, its resinous scent heavy with centuries of devotion. Frankincense followed, sharper, its bright edge cutting through the shadows like the first light of dawn. And beneath them both, a subtler note, the earthy bitterness of desert herbs, crushed fresh before the ritual and laid upon the coals to smolder. The priests moved in a slow circuit around the altar, ceramic censers swinging gently from their hands. With each step, a cloud of fragrant smoke rose up and drifted upward, blurring the painted faces of the gods that watched from the walls. The air thickened, not with heat, but with a weight that seemed to press gently on the skin, as though the very breath of the gods was filling the chamber. Those closest to the altar inhaled deeply. It was not a hurried breath, but a slow, measured drawing in, the kind that filled the lungs and spread warmth through the limbs. Eyes closed, they held it, letting the perfume coil through their minds, loosening the grip of the day's thoughts. A low hum began, not a chant yet, but the shared vibration of voices finding the same tone. The sound matched the slow rhythm of the heart, a pulse beneath the scent. In that union of breath and sound, something began to change. The edges of the room softened. The flicker of the lamps grew elongated, their flames bending in ways that defied the breeze. One by one, the priests lifted their censers higher, circling the altar 3 times before placing them at its base. The smoke pooled thickly there, swirling as though stirred by invisible hands. The high priest stepped forward, lifting both arms toward the shadowed ceiling, his voice breaking the hum with words in the temple's oldest tongue. The guests allowed within the temple watched in silence. Some felt their own breathing slow to match the rhythm. Others found themselves swaying gently without meaning to, drawn into the cadence of the rite. The line between body and spirit was beginning to blur, and beyond that line, they all knew, lay the threshold of the gods.
Above the temple's open roof, the moon had risen, swollen, heavy, and tinged with the deep crimson of a desert eclipse. Its light poured through the square opening like molten wine, pooling on the altar and staining the drifting smoke a shade of blood. The priests raised their eyes to it, and a murmur passed among them, not of words, but of recognition. The red moon had come, as the old prophecies said it would. By now the air was dense with the mingled breath of myrrh, frankincense, and the sharp resin of juniper. The smoke clung to skin and hair,
seeped into linen robes and swirled in the torchlight like restless spirits. In this thickness, the boundaries of the visible world blurred. Shadows became shapes. Shapes became presences. The high priest stepped forward, his bare feet soundless on the worn stone. In his hands, he held a shallow bronze bowl filled with oil, its surface catching the moonlight in a trembling reflection. He poured it slowly into a fire basin, and flames leapt higher, licking the air as though hungry for the offering. Then came the chant, low at first, a single voice weaving syllables older than the temple itself. Others joined, each note a step upward, each repetition deepening the rhythm until it seemed the floor itself was pulsing. The incense smoke grew thicker still, rising like pillars to meet the moon above. One by one, the priests knelt, closing their eyes. Their bodies remained upright, but their breathing slowed to something almost inhuman, a rhythm not of lungs, but of the earth itself. They had entered the threshold state, that strange borderland between waking and dream where visions could walk. Those in attendance began to feel it too, a tingling behind the eyes, a warmth in the chest, the sense that unseen hands were lifting them from the stone floor, drawing them into an unseen place. Through the haze, faint shapes appeared, not fully formed but luminous, moving with the slow grace of deep water. The high priest's voice broke through again, louder now, calling upon the divine by their secret names. Somewhere in the smoke, something answered, not with sound, but with a shift in the air, a sudden awareness that the gods were no longer distant. They were here, among them, under the red moon.
The air trembled as though the temple itself had drawn a long, deep breath. The crimson moonlight now seemed to thicken, becoming almost tangible, a slow-moving river of color spilling down through the open roof. The smoke parted in coiling strands, not by the wind, but as if something unseen was walking among them. The high priest remained kneeling, head bowed, hands open in silent invitation. Around him, the circle of priests leaned forward, their foreheads nearly touching the stone floor. The chant had faded into a hum, steady, low, and resonant, like the echo of a drum in a distant cavern. From the center of the smoke, a form began to take shape. At first, it was only an outline, taller than any human, crowned with what seemed like a shifting halo of flame. The light it cast was not like fire, nor like the moon, but something older, deeper, a radiance that carried the weight of countless ages. The attendants dared not raise their heads, but they felt it. A sudden heaviness in their bones, a ringing in their ears, and a sensation as if their very thoughts were being watched. It was not fear in the usual sense. It was awe, raw and overwhelming, the kind that could break a man or remake him entirely. The high priest's voice returned, trembling but unbroken, reciting a vow older than the walls themselves. With each word, the form grew more defined, robes flowing as though under water, hands marked with symbols that shifted like living script, eyes like twin embers that could see through flesh into the soul beneath. A ripple went through the gathered crowd. Some swayed as if in a trance, others wept silently,
and a few collapsed to their knees without knowing why. It was as if the god's presence was pressing down upon them, peeling away every mask they had ever worn. Then the figure extended a hand, not in threat, but in offering. The high priest placed both palms upward, and for a moment, just a moment, the mortal and the divine touched. The light flared, and every flame in the temple bent toward that single point, as if gravity itself had shifted. No one spoke, no one dared. The descent had come to its fullness. Whatever had been summoned was now here, seated in the space between worlds, looking upon them with the quiet certainty of a being that had seen empires rise and fall like grains of sand. And just as suddenly the weight lifted, the figure dissolved into the smoke, the light receded, and the crimson moon returned to its silent watch. The ritual was not over, but the god had arrived.
The god's presence lingered in the air like the fading vibration of a temple bell. Though the radiant form had dissolved, the space it occupied still felt dense, heavy with unseen currents. Every soul in the chamber knew that the moment of exchange had come, the point where mortal devotion was to be answered, but only if the offering was worthy. The high priest rose slowly, as though lifting the weight of centuries upon his back. He turned to the acolytes, who approached with objects shrouded in silk of deep indigo. No one dared to touch the bundles with bare hands. Even the cloth was said to have been steeped in moonlit spring water for 9 nights to cleanse it of any mortal stain. One by one, the offerings were revealed, a chalice of hammered gold that caught and held the red glow from above, a vial of oil so fragrant that even the smoke seemed to lean toward it, a shard of crystal etched with runes older than the city itself. But the centerpiece was a small, stoppered jar carved from black obsidian, its seal marked with the sign of the first breath, the sign of beginnings and endings. The crowd murmured, for few had seen such a relic outside of legend. It was said to contain the essence of the forgotten bloom, a flower that bloomed only once in 100 years, deep in the shadowed cliffs beyond the empire's borders. Its scent was whispered to be able to call back memories long buried, or erase them entirely. The high priest placed the obsidian jar before the altar. His voice, steady despite the tremor in his hands, called upon the god to accept what had been kept hidden for generations. He spoke of the covenant between deity and mortal, of the debts owed and the promises yet to be fulfilled. A sudden gust rose within the temple, though no wind should have touched this sacred hall. The flames wavered, then bent forward, bowing toward the altar. The air grew warmer, and for a heartbeat, the obsidian jar pulsed with a dim inner light. The seal cracked with a soft hiss, releasing a single tendril of silver vapor that curled upward like a beckoning finger. The scent that followed was unlike any earthly fragrance, both sweet and metallic, floral and sharp. It filled the lungs with a strange clarity, as though stripping away every falsehood a person had ever told themselves. Some wept openly, others gasped as half-forgotten visions returned to them in vivid flashes. The god's unseen presence stirred, like a tide turning under the moon. The offering had been accepted. The high priest bowed low, knowing that such a moment would echo through the order's annals for centuries to come. But even as the jar emptied its final breath, the priest's gaze lingered on the silver vapor. He knew what the scent meant. He knew it was the key to another chapter of power, one hidden away in scrolls locked behind iron doors. Recipes for potions, perfumes, and elixirs that could bend memory, desire, and will itself. The god had taken their offering. Now the time had come to seek the knowledge that would prepare the next one.
The transition from the temple's incense-filled air to the private chambers of the Pharaohs' healers was like stepping from the realm of gods into the guarded vaults of earthly secrets. Here, under the flickering light of oil lamps, stood rows of alabaster jars, each etched with symbols only the initiated could read. The air was thick with the scent of crushed herbs and warm honey, a fragrance so deep and sweet it seemed to settle into your skin. This was the sanctuary of potions, where healers and priests blurred the line between medicine and mysticism. In ancient Egypt, honey was more than food. It was a gift of the gods, the very blood of the sun captured in golden drops. Mixed with rare herbs gathered from the edges of the Nile and the far reaches of the desert, it could heal wounds or transport the mind into gentle euphoria. Some recipes cured fevers. Others, whispered about in low tones, could carry the spirit to the threshold of another world. Scribes recorded these mixtures in scrolls locked away in temple archives, but some formulas were never written, passed only from master to apprentice, as if the words themselves might unleash their power to anyone who read them. The most dangerous of all was known as Sekem's breath, a syrupy blend of honey, lotus pollen, and an herb that bloomed only once a year under a blood moon. Its taste was said to be sweet as a lover's kiss, but its effect could open visions so vivid one might forget which world they belonged to.
If the honeyed potions were the key to the body's healing, then the perfumes of the temple were the whispers that spoke directly to the soul. Beyond the apothecary's chamber lay a smaller room, darker and more private, where even the high priests removed their sandals before entering. Here the air was almost heavy, thick with the scent of oils that had been steeping for decades in sealed ceramic jars. The moment you stepped in, it was as if the world outside ceased to exist. The perfume wrapped itself around you, blinding the mind to all but its own intoxication. These were not perfumes for beauty or seduction in the worldly sense. They were crafted for one purpose: to bridge the gap between mortals and the divine. The base was often made from rare resins like myrrh or frankincense, imported along hidden trade routes from distant lands. Into this base the perfumers mixed crushed petals of desert roses, drops of blue lotus extract, and, in the most secret formulas, the essence of forbidden blooms, flowers that grew only within the temple gardens, shielded from the eyes of common folk. These blossoms were not merely rare, they were believed to carry the dreams of the gods themselves. One such oil, known as Tears of Hathor,
was rumored to cause visions so vivid that those who inhaled it could walk through the memories of the goddess, feeling her joys, her sorrows, her jealous rages. Only the most trusted oracle priests were allowed to use it, and only on nights when the temple was bathed in silver moonlight. Its preparation was a ritual in itself. The petals had to be plucked in silence, the oil stirred exactly 7 times in a clockwise motion, and the final mixture sealed with a thread of gold. The danger of these perfumes was not in the body, but in the mind. Some who inhaled too deeply never truly returned from the visions. They would wander the temple halls, murmuring words no one else understood, eyes fixed on something far beyond the walls. It was for this reason that certain recipes were ordered erased from the temple walls by decree of the Pharaoh. The whispers of them lingered in the minds of those who once prepared them.
Long before the temple walls were scrubbed bare, they had been alive with color and words. Rows of hieroglyphs danced across smooth limestone, telling not the tales of kings and battles, but the recipes that were said to hold the breath of the gods. Every mark was carved with reverence, painted with pigments so rich that they seemed to glow even in torchlight. But one season, no one knows exactly when, the chisels came in the night. By decree of the Pharaoh, certain passages were ordered destroyed. The reasons were whispered. Some claimed the knowledge was too powerful, able to bend minds and hearts with a single inhalation of a potion or scent. Others said the gods themselves had sent omens, warning that mortals were not meant to wield such gifts. Whatever the truth, the walls that had once sung with divine instructions became blank stretches of pale stone. Priests who had memorized the erased words carried them only in their minds, speaking them in low voices behind locked doors. The most dangerous among these was a formula said to unite the 3 realms, the physical, the spiritual, and the dream world through a single draught. It combined the honeyed elixirs of the apothecary, the forbidden blooms of the temple gardens, and a powder ground from a rare stone found only in the heart of the desert. Those who drank it were said to slip into a waking trance, able to see through time itself. The erasure was not perfect. Here and there, a faint outline of a glyph still clung to the stone, like the shadow of a memory that refused to fade. In the deepest hours of the night, some claimed you could still smell the perfume of the forbidden oil seeping invisibly from the walls. The temple gods would find offerings left at these bare stretches, petals, beads, or small jars of oil left by those who still believed the knowledge could be awakened. To walk these halls was to feel the weight of absence. The silence was not empty, it was watchful, as if the walls themselves were guarding their lost secrets. And yet, in that absence lay the greatest temptation, the unshakable human desire to know what has been hidden. It was this hunger that would one day lead the next seeker to try and rebuild the lost recipes, no matter the cost. The priests spoke of it only in the quietest tones, as if the very air could betray them. They called it Shetep Ka, the elixir of dream and death, a draught that could open the gates between between life and the shadowed realms. In the language of the temple, Shetep meant to pacify, and Ka was the soul. Yet those who understood its full meaning knew it was far more than a gentle calming of the spirit. The formula began innocently enough: honey from the bees of the delta, thick and golden, warmed until it ran like molten sunlight. Into this, the apothecary would stir crushed petals of the midnight lotus, a flower that bloomed only under the new moon and was said to whisper in the language of dreams. Then came the rare desert powder, ground from a stone that shimmered with both blue and gold in the torchlight. This was no ordinary mineral. It was the hardened tears of a meteorite, fallen long before Egypt's first pharaoh took the throne. Drunk in small doses, the elixir granted visions so vivid that the dreamer could walk through memories as if they were corridors, touch the faces of the dead, and hear the voices of unborn generations. But in greater measure, the draught blurred the lines between dreaming and dying. Some never woke. Others returned with eyes that no longer focused on the world before them, forever gazing at something unseen. It was said that one pharaoh, his name now lost, used Shetep Ka not for himself, but as a weapon. Inviting his rivals to a feast, he had their cups filled with the sweet-smelling potion. They laughed, toasted, and drank, only to fall silent moments later, their bodies present, their souls wandering far beyond recall. The throne passed quietly to the pharaoh's bloodline, and the event was recorded only in whispers, never in stone. Those who sought the elixir in later generations found only fragments of its recipe, half a verse carved into a hidden lintel, a drawing of the midnight lotus on the underside of a ceremonial bowl, the faint perfume of honey and resin clinging to a jar sealed for centuries. It was dangerous knowledge, and danger has its own kind of allure. The temple walls may have been scrubbed clean, but the memory of Shetep Ka lingered in the air, in the blood of those who had once tasted it, and in the restless dreams of those who had not. And somewhere, deep in the shadowed heart of the temple, a single sealed amphora was said to remain, untouched, waiting, patient as death itself.
By the time the temple walls had been stripped of their secrets, and the priests who had once guarded the ancient recipes had turned to dust, only one person remained. She was not a priestess, nor a scribe, nor a queen. She was the daughter of a humble incense maker, a woman whose eyes seemed to hold the reflection of both moonlight and shadow. Her name was lost in official records, erased like the murals before her, but among the market whispers she was called Nebet Seshat, mistress of hidden scripts. It was said she could read the faintest ink even after centuries of fading, and hear the voice of papyrus beneath her fingertips. She had inherited from her father not wealth, but the scent memory of 1,000 blends, and from her mother a silence so deep it could bury entire truths. Nebet did not seek Shetep Ka. It found her. One evening, when the Nile's tide was low and the scent of reeds mingled with the dying sun, an old jar was delivered to her stall. No name, no origin, just a seal marked with the falcon of Horus, cracked by time but still warm to the touch.
Inside, the scent rose like a ghost, honey, resin, the faint metallic breath of stone not of this earth. Her hands trembled. She knew at once. For weeks she dared not open it again, but dreams began to visit her. Strange, vivid dreams of temples she had never seen, of voices calling her by a name she did not know, of eyes watching from the shadowed corners of her own home. And always, somewhere in the dream, a man's laughter, low, knowing, dangerous. Nebet understood the risk. The elixir of dream and death was no longer just a myth. It was here, breathing in the same air she did. And if the wrong hands claimed it, not even the gods would be able to stop what followed. So she vanished. Some say she fled south, to the lands where the Nile turns to gold beneath the setting sun. Others whisper she crossed the desert to a hidden oasis where she waits, neither young nor old, carrying the amphora under the folds of her linen robe. But there is one tale, told rarely and never in daylight, that says Nebet did not run from the elixir. It followed its call, across stone corridors and moonlit gardens, until it led her not to a temple, but to the embrace of a man whose scent was more intoxicating than Lotus or myrrh. He was not a priest, he was not a king, but he would draw her into a story the Nile itself would carry for centuries, one of love, of desire, and of a danger far sweeter than death. And so the last guardian stepped willingly into the current that would pull her into the next chapter of her life.
Nebet's fingers traced the rough, fibrous texture of the papyrus, but her mind was not on the words, it was on the scent. Papyrus was the very skin of Egypt's voice, used to record treaties, tax ledgers, and prayers to the gods. But in this moment, it held something far more dangerous, a love letter. This was no ordinary correspondence. The sheet before her was steeped in a fragrance of crushed lotus petals, blue water lily oil, and a faint whisper of cinnamon. Ingredients once reserved for offerings to Hathor, goddess of love and music. The scent was not accidental. In the bustling streets of Thebes and Memphis, lovers knew that words could be copied, but fragrance could not. The perfume on a letter clung to the mind long after the ink faded, carrying with it the ghost of the sender's presence. Egyptian lovers of the New Kingdom had perfected the art of scent as seduction. Merchants brought rare resins from Punt, cinnamon from distant Ceylon, and myrrh from across the Red Sea. To infuse papyrus, one would steam the sheet over a pot of aromatic oils, letting the fibers drink in the perfume. The act was intimate, almost sacred. By the time the letter reached its reader, it was as though the writer's breath still warmed the air. Nebet unfolded the scroll slowly, each movement a deliberate caress, as if the air might steal the fragrance away. The words inside were written in flowing hieratic script. When the moon meets the Nile, so shall our shadows meet, and the water will know our names. It was signed only with the symbol of an ibis, a mark she recognized. Somewhere the writer waited, knowing that the scent would reach her before the meaning did. And when it did, she would have no defense,
For in Egypt, scent was memory, and memory was power.
In the heart of the market in Memphis, amid the smell of roasting barley bread and the clink of bronze scales, there was a small stall draped in crimson linen. Few passed it without slowing their steps. Here the air shimmered, not from the desert heat, but from whispers of magic. It was the shop of Sati, an amulet maker whose name traveled faster than the Nile's current. Egyptians believed that love could be coaxed, shaped, and even summoned, provided one knew the right combination of symbols, scents, and spells. Amulets of desire were not crude love potions. They were intricate works of art, blending psychology with the sacred. Some were carved from lapis lazuli, believed to hold the gaze of Hathor herself. Others were molded from red jasper, symbolizing passion and vitality. Every stone, every symbol was chosen for its power over the heart. Sati's most requested charm was the knot of Isis, a talisman shaped like a looped sash. Worn close to the skin, it was said to tie one's soul to another's, making separation unthinkable. But Sati knew the truth. The magic was not only in the stone or the knot, but in the belief. She would whisper a blessing as she tied the cord, her voice low, her breath scented with frankincense. By the time the buyer left, they were already convinced of its power, and that conviction itself changed how they looked, moved, and spoke to the one they desired. The effect was undeniable. A young scribe, shy and unremarkable, returned weeks later with a new confidence, his love life transformed. He swore the amulet had done it, but Sati knew better. The talisman was a mirror, reflecting back the desire already smoldering inside. Egyptian priests had long understood this principle. In temple rituals, amulets were used not only for protection, but to focus intent. When desire is focused, it becomes magnetic. A lover wearing an amulet approached their beloved differently, eyes lingering a fraction longer, voice softened at the edges. And in a world where social rules were strict, such subtle shifts could be the difference between longing and fulfillment. In Sati's stall, the charms hung in neat rows, swaying gently as if in a breeze only they could feel. They caught the light, each one holding a promise of warmth in the night, of a hand that would not let go. And somewhere in the crowd, another seeker was making their way forward, ready to trade a measure of gold for a glimmer of hope.
The story was told in hushed voices, often near the riverbank, where the reeds swayed like an audience leaning in to listen. Long ago, in the reign of a pharaoh whose name had been worn away by time, there lived a princess named Neferura. Her beauty was like moonlight on still water, soft, elusive, impossible to hold. She was the daughter of the royal house, raised in the perfume of lotus gardens and the music of golden harps. Beyond the palace walls, in a small village by the Nile, lived a farmer named Beck. His life was measured in the bending of the sun, in the cycles of flood and harvest. His hands were darkened by earth, his back bent by labor, yet his spirit was unbowed. One evening, while drawing water from the river, he saw her, standing on a palace balcony, gazing out at the horizon as if searching for something the royal world could not give her. That night, Beck dreamed of Hathor, the goddess of love and joy. She came to him crowned with papyrus and gold, her eyes deep as the Nile at flood. She spoke in a voice like warm honey. The heart knows no rank. The river flows to all. Go to her. When he woke, his heart pounded not with fear, but with certainty. Days passed. Under the protection of Hathor's blessing, Beck found himself drawn to the palace gates, carrying baskets of the season's first figs as an offering. The guards laughed at the idea that a farmer could present a gift to a princess. But Neferura, hearing the commotion, came forth. Her eyes met his, and in that moment the world quieted. They began exchanging messages on papyrus slips, each brushed with ink and lightly scented with crushed jasmine petals. These were no ordinary letters. Each was a bridge between two worlds, the ink carrying words of longing and the scent carrying the pulse of their hearts. The more they wrote, the more the palace walls seemed less like barriers and more like thin veils, easy to pass through with a glance, a smile, a whispered word. Yet danger lurked. A princess's heart was not hers to give. It was a matter of state, of alliances and power. If discovered, their love could be crushed like a reed in the wind. But Hathor's protection was subtle. Whenever suspicion rose, a flood, a feast, or a festival would conveniently distract the court. Some said it was chance. Beck and Neferura knew better. One night, as the moon turned the Nile to silver, they met in the Lotus garden. Beck wore around his neck a small amulet carved in Hathor's likeness, a gift from Neferura. She told him, "As long as you keep this close, no shadow can find us." Their fingers intertwined, not with the urgency of stolen moments, but with the quiet certainty that love, real love, was worth defying the world for. The legend says they disappeared together during the festival of the beautiful valley, crossing the river to a life hidden from history. Some say they lived in a house of reeds, raising children who carried the light of both royal grace and humble earth. Others believe they were taken up by Hathor herself to dwell in her eternal fields of love. Whatever the truth, the amulet was never found, but in the markets of Egypt, lovers still whisper of its power.
In the bustling markets of Thebes, scents wove through the air like invisible tapestries. Frankincense curling in lazy spirals, myrrh smoldering in clay bowls, and lotus oil glistening in small alabaster jars. Perfume in Egypt was more than a luxury, it was a language. A single drop could speak of longing, devotion, or danger more clearly than any words. Among the perfumers of Thebes was a woman named Satra, whose shop stood hidden in the shadow of a temple. She was no ordinary merchant. Her blends were sought by queens and courtesans alike, for she claimed each scent was born not just of flowers and resins, but of the very breath of the gods. Her craft was precise, almost sacred. She believed that to capture a scent was to capture a memory, and to wear it was to summon that memory into the present. It was said that Neferura herself once visited Satra, cloaked and veiled, seeking a fragrance unlike any other, a scent to guard her heart yet call it to life. Satra listened without question, then set to work. She crushed blue lotus petals before dawn, when their fragrance was at its sweetest. She mixed them with honeyed frankincense, a pinch of cinnamon from the Red Sea trade, and a drop of oil pressed from the sacred mandrake.
When the perfume was ready, Satra placed it in a tiny alabaster vial, sealed with beeswax. "This," she told Neferura, "will hide you in plain sight. To strangers it will smell of incense. To the one your heart seeks, it will be an unbreakable call." And so it was. Whenever Beck came near, the air shifted, and the scent wove around him like a memory he could not place, yet could not resist. They began to meet not in words alone, but in fragrance. The perfume left on a folded cloth, a trace brushed onto a basket handle, a whisper of scent in the garden breeze. But perfume, like love, is never truly invisible. A court attendant noticed it first, then a priest, then whispers began to move through the palace halls. Yet each time suspicion reached for the truth, it slipped away, hidden behind festival smoke, masked by the sense of offerings in the temple. Years later, when the lovers had vanished, Satra's shop was found empty, her jars gone, her door unbarred. Some say she left to follow them, carrying her art into exile. Others say she was called by Hathor herself to craft perfumes for the gods. Even now, in the perfumer's quarter of modern Cairo, there is a rumor. If you find the right shop and ask for Neferura's breath, you will be given a scent so delicate it feels like memory, and so powerful it may alter the course of your heart.
The beautiful Valley Festival was meant to honor the gods and remember the dead. But for Beck and Neferura, it was a chance to breathe the same air without the suffocating walls of the palace or the fear of being overheard. The procession began at dawn, golden barges drifting down the Nile, their sails catching the first light, their hulls heavy with offerings of bread, flowers and beer. Priests in white linen robes chanted hymns as the sacred bark of Amun was carried from Karnak to the West Bank, where the necropolis awaited. The entire city came alive, weaving garlands, pouring wine, and sharing stories with the spirits of ancestors. Among the throngs, Beck slipped into the crowd, his hands hidden beneath a basket of lotus blooms. Neferura rode in a gilded chariot, her face veiled, her posture regal. Yet when their paths crossed in the chaos of music and incense, a faint scent, a whisper of Neferura's breath passed between them. It was enough. Their eyes met for a heartbeat too long, the noise of the festival fading until there was only the pull of that invisible thread between them. In a secluded garden behind a small mortuary temple, they met briefly, speaking in the low tones of conspirators. Beck pressed into her hand a folded strip of papyrus sealed with beeswax. "Open it only when you are alone," he warned. Inside was a verse he had written in careful hieratic script, words of longing, a promise of a night yet to come, and a warning of the danger closing in. For the palace was changing. Whispers had grown louder, and not all were harmless. An ambitious priest had seen the way Neferura's gaze lingered in the crowd, and though he could not name Beck, he was determined to unmask her secret. There were rumors of charms too potent to be mere fragrance, of rituals drawn from forbidden scrolls locked in temple archives. That evening, as the sun bled into the Nile and lanterns bloomed along the banks, Beck and Neferura parted, knowing the next meeting might not be under the forgiving cover of a festival, but in the shadow of scandal. The moon rose high, and somewhere in the city's heart, an anonymous hand unsealed a jar of perfumed oil and inhaled deeply. The scent was intoxicating, dangerous, and it marked the beginning of what history would later call the Year of the Forbidden Practices.
The palace at Thebes was no stranger to intrigue. Its limestone walls had absorbed centuries of secrets, schemes whispered in candlelight, alliances forged over goblets of pomegranate wine, and scandals that were buried in sand rather than remembered in stone. Yet this time, the whispers carried a sharper edge. Accusations of abusing sacred rites for personal gain. In the heart of these rumors were not lowly officials, but members of the highest order, Pharaoh's own kin, and the most respected priests. It began with a single festival, the Feast of Opet. Traditionally a time for joy, it was when Amun's statue was carried from Karnak to Luxor Temple in a grand procession. But this year, something was different. Observers claimed that during the ritual blessing of the Nile, a senior nobleman held back certain offerings, only to present them later in a private ceremony, one attended only by the pharaoh, his inner circle, and a select group of temple priests. Word spread quickly. Some said it was nothing but a political ritual meant to strengthen the pharaoh's divine authority. Others whispered it was darker, an invocation meant to bind loyalty or even the will of those present. The air grew heavy with suspicion, and every closed door became a breeding ground for theories. Among the most vocal was a young scribe named Panehesi. His eyes had seen too much in the temple archives, scrolls detailing Hej Nesu, a practice outlawed generations ago. It was said to involve reciting divine hymns backward under moonlight, mixing sacred incense with rare desert resins, and using the anointing oil only meant for the gods on mortal flesh. If true, this was no longer pious devotion. It was sacrilege of the highest order. What made the matter even more dangerous was the involvement of certain women from the royal harem. Behind the silken curtains and the perfumed corridors, they had influence as potent as any general. And if they were involved, whether in temptation, manipulation, or ritual, it meant the scandal was not just about religion, it was about control. Thebes buzzed like a disturbed hive. Merchants gossiped in the marketplace. Guards exchanged sideline glances, and the high priests of Amun began an unspoken game of distancing themselves without openly defying the throne. But the scent of forbidden incense lingered, and for those who had breathed it in, the line between loyalty and enchantment blurred dangerously. The charges came quietly at first, written in the measured script of temple scribes, sealed with the mark of the high priest of Amun. But the moment the wax cracked open, the room felt colder. The accusation was plain. The sacred oil, seshem, consecrated for anointing the gods' statues, had been applied to mortal flesh during a private ceremony. This was not a matter of etiquette. It was a direct violation of divine law. In ancient Egypt, seshem was more than fragrant oil. It was the breath of the gods made liquid. Blended from blue lotus, frankincense, myrrh, and rare desert herbs, it was prepared only during specific lunar alignments and kept sealed in gold-lidded alabaster jars within the inner sanctum. For a mortal to touch it outside of its intended ritual was to blur the line between human and divine, a transgression considered both spiritual theft and cosmic imbalance. Witnesses emerged in hushed tones. One servant claimed to have seen a golden jar carried out of the temple late at night, hidden in a basket of figs. Another swore that during the feast of Apit, the pharaoh's cousin, Lord Men-Kharoura, had anointed his own forehead and wrists with the oil, whispering words in a tongue the servant did not understand. The whispers suggested it was not prayer, but invocation, the kind used in rites meant to draw favor or bend the will of others. The trial was to be held not in the public courts, but within the temple's hall of judgment, where light streamed in from a single skylight, and every echo carried the weight of eternity. The accused stood barefoot, stripped of the jewelry that marked their status. Around them sat the council of priests, robed in spotless white, faces carved from stone in their solemnity. Panahesi, the young scribe who had first uncovered the forbidden text, was called to testify. His scroll bore the passage forbidding mortals from receiving the oil of the gods upon their skin, lest they assume a role not theirs to bear. As he read, the hall seemed to hold its breath. But here lay the danger. To convict a man of Lord Men-Kharoura's stature was to risk destabilizing the very fabric of the court. Pharaoh himself had not spoken publicly, but his presence loomed in every pause, every side glance. It was whispered that if Men-Kharoura fell, others, perhaps even the pharaoh, could be implicated. By sunset, the priests had not reached a verdict. The hall was emptied, but the whispers grew louder beyond its walls. The scent of sesame lingered in the air, as if it mocking the idea that its power could be contained. And somewhere in the palace, a gold-lidded jar sat in the dark, waiting for the next hand bold enough or foolish enough to break its seal.
When the trial reached its second week without a verdict, a new player stepped into the game. One who did not need to enter the Hall of Judgment to influence its outcome. Queen Merit-Ra, the pharaoh's second wife and mistress of the royal harem, summoned the high priest to her private chambers. The summons itself was unprecedented. For a queen to interfere in temple justice was a dangerous gamble, but Merit-Ra had never been one to fear danger. Her chambers smelled of Kethi incense, the rich blend of honey, raisins, wine, and exotic herbs that was said to invite visions. Curtains of gold-threaded linen swayed in the desert breeze, casting shifting shadows on the polished floor. The high priest entered with the dignity of a man who understood both his sacred duty and the political tightrope he walked. Merit-Ra wasted no time. The sacred oil, it is not only Men-Kharoura's sin you seek to judge. You and I both know the jar that left the temple was not alone. There were others, and some are in the hands who will never stand in this hall. The high priest's face did not change, but his fingers tightened slightly on his staff. She pressed on. If Men-Kharoura falls, the oil's trail will lead higher, perhaps to the pharaoh himself. And if the gods are invoked in such a scandal, the people will lose faith, temples will lose power, you will lose power. Her proposition was clear without being spoken. Spare Men-Kharoura, bury the scandal, and in return, the queen would ensure the temple received the next shipment of Nubian gold, unrestricted by the treasury's usual accounting.
But there was more to merit Ra's interest than protecting the royal name. Some whispered she had her own reasons for keeping Seshem beyond temple walls. Her beauty was legendary, but so too were the rumors that it never faded with the years. Blue lotus baths, exotic unguents, and perhaps, just perhaps, a drop of the god's own oil upon her skin. When the high priest left, the air in the chamber felt heavier, as though the bargain itself had a physical weight. Outside, the Nile's current flowed quietly, carrying with it the unspoken truth. In Egypt, divine law was eternal, but human power could bend it if the price was high enough.
While the palace intrigue played out in gilded halls, another, quieter storm was brewing far from the throne. Down in the necropolis, where the dead of Egypt slept beneath the sand, the priests of Anubis, keepers of the tombs and guardians of sacred burial rites, had begun to whisper. It started with a lowly embalmer's apprentice who claimed he had seen Menkaura's personal scribe passing through the shadowed corridors at night, carrying a sealed jar wrapped in linen. The jar bore the faint blue shimmer of sesame oil. At first, the older priests dismissed it as gossip from a boy who had inhaled too much natron dust. But then 2 more reports came in, from different ends of the necropolis, of royal envoys arriving under moonlight, escorted by guards who wore no insignia. Rumors said the sacred oil was being used not only for the living, but for the dead, and not just any dead. Some believed it was applied to certain mummies to awaken visions for those who touched the wrappings, a forbidden act known in the oldest scrolls as Reket Neger, the opening of the divine mind. In the wrong hands, this was not enlightenment, it was control. One tombkeeper, an old man with eyes like dried figs, claimed he saw a noblewoman enter the crypt of a long-dead prince, emerging pale and trembling hours later. She muttered that the prince had spoken to her and promised her the pharaoh's favor. The whispers reached the ears of the Medjai, Egypt's elite guards and investigators, who began to move through the necropolis in pairs, their bronze-tipped spears glinting in the torchlight. But in Egypt, secrets buried with the dead did not always stay buried. And somewhere deep beneath the sands, in a chamber no map recorded, another meeting was taking place. A meeting that would drag the scandal from the shadows of the tombs into the blazing light of the court.
The palace square had never been so silent. No merchants hawked their wares, no musicians played their flutes. The air was thick, as though the Nile itself had paused in its flow to watch. Before the colossal statues of the gods, a long dais had been erected, its steps draped in white linen. On it sat the high priests, the pharaoh's viziers, and the Medjay captain, whose eyes could cut through lies like a bronze blade through papyrus. At the center, bound in gilded chains, knelt the accused, Menkaura's scribe, the noblewoman from the necropolis, and 2 guards without insignia. Their faces glistened with sweat, not from the heat, but from the weight of divine judgment. Scrolls containing charges were read aloud: theft of sacred oils, desecration of royal tombs, manipulation of visions to sway the pharaoh's favor. Each offense carried not only mortal punishment, but the wrath of the gods. witnesses stepped forward, a trembling embalmer's apprentice, a Medjay scout, and even an aged priest of Anubis who dared to break the ancient silence to reveal what he had seen. Every testimony painted the same picture, a conspiracy wound tight around the pharaoh's court, pulling its strings hidden for years. The scribe claimed innocence, saying he acted under orders from a higher voice, but when pressed, he would not name it. The noblewoman, pale and shaking, admitted she had entered the tomb seeking guidance, but swore she had been led there by dreams too vivid to ignore. The trial became a theater, half justice, half revelation. And then, just as the Medjay captain moved to deliver his judgment, a messenger burst into the square. His sandals were torn, his breath ragged. He fell to his knees before the pharaoh and whispered something that made the ruler's knuckles tighten on the armrest. The captain paused, eyes narrowing. The messenger's words were brief but heavy. "Your Majesty, there is another, and this one wears the crown." Gasps spread through the crowd. The accusation was no longer confined to scribes and nobles. It had reached the royal bloodline itself. The trial of shadows had only just begun, and its path would lead straight into the heart of scandal that no dynasty could escape.
The tomb's entrance yawned open like the mouth of a god, swallowing the torchlight into its silent, timeless corridors. The air was thick with the scent of age, stone, dust, and something sweeter, almost floral, that lingered in the shadows. Archaeologists paused, sensing the weight of centuries pressing against them. This was no ordinary resting place. Lining the chamber walls were shelves carved directly into limestone, holding rows of ceramic jars painted with faded hieroglyphs. Their lids were sealed with resin, as though still guarding secrets too potent for the living. Each jar bore an emblem: lotus flowers, stalks of papyrus, or the falcon's eye, symbols of protection, rebirth, and divine sight. When the first jar was carefully opened, a scent rose that silenced the room. Inside lay a mixture of brittle petals, powdered roots, and dried herbs, remnants of rituals meant to guide the dead through the perilous journey to the afterlife. Ancient Egyptian records spoke of such blends: blue lotus for divine visions, frankincense to purify the soul, myrrh to sweeten the breath of the deceased before they stood in the hall of judgment. What struck the team most was the preservation. Thousands of years had passed, yet the herbs still clung to their fragrance, whispering of hands that once crushed them, priests who had murmured sacred words over them, and grieving families who believed these offerings would speak on behalf of the dead to the gods. Further into the tomb, they found wooden boxes bound with copper clasps. When pried open, they revealed bundles of dried flowers, some woven into intricate wreaths, others scattered loosely, as if hastily placed in a moment of raw grief. Pollen analysis later revealed exotic blooms from lands beyond Egypt's borders, suggesting that this noble had connections reaching across deserts and seas. It was here, in the hushed glow of oil lamps, that the past began to breathe. Every jar, every blossom seemed to carry a voice telling fragments of a story lost to history, a story of devotion, fear, and the unshakable belief that life did not end in the tomb.
In the deepest chamber of the tomb, The walls came alive with scenes carved and painted in colors that still pulsed faintly after millennia. Here was the heart of the burial's spiritual power, the ritual of mist and shadow. The depiction was unlike the familiar funerary processions often seen in Theban tombs. Instead of rows of mourners and priests, the fresco showed a dimly lit sanctuary. A single brazier burned in the center, its flames feeding on a resin so thick that coils of white smoke billowed upward. The tendrils of mist curled around the figures, softening their outlines, as if the boundary between the living and the dead was dissolving. In the painting, a high priest, his face painted gold and his robes heavy with lapis and carnelian, poured a dark liquid from a small alabaster jar into the brazier. The hieroglyphic captions suggested this was a blend of sacred oils and crushed blue lotus, substances believed to open the senses to visions. Around him, attendants fanned the smoke toward the body of the deceased, whose sarcophagus was depicted not lying flat, but upright, as if ready to step into another world. One corner of the wall showed an image of a jackal-headed figure, Anubis, emerging from the mist, his hand outstretched toward the soul of the dead. In another, the falcon-headed Horus guided a spectral boat across a river of stars, the soul standing at its prow. The artistry blurred the lines between dream and ritual. It was hard to tell if these were visions seen by the living during the rite or the journey itself unfolding in the afterlife. Egyptologists studying the scene noted a curious detail. The smoke was painted with a shimmering overlay of ground malachite mixed into the pigment. Under torchlight, it seemed to glisten and move, giving the illusion that it was still alive. This suggested the ancient artists intended the viewers, be they mourners or gods, to feel drawn into the vision. What purpose did this mist serve? Ancient texts such as the Book of the Heavenly Cow and fragments from the Temple of Edfu hint at answers. The smoke was more than symbolic. It was believed to be a medium in which spirits could manifest. Breathing it, the priests might enter trance states, their minds opening to messages from the beyond. For the soul of the dead, it was a bridge, a vaporous road leading toward Osiris's realm. Modern chemical analysis of residue on the wall's plaster revealed traces of frankincense, myrrh, cinnamon, and even cannabis pollen. This discovery stirred speculation. Were these rituals also intended to induce visions among the participants, creating a shared experience of the deceased's passage into eternity? Standing in that chamber today, with the faint scent of ancient resin still caught in the pores of the stone, one could almost hear the low chant of the priests, the rustle of linen, the crackle of burning herbs. The air seemed heavy, waiting for the next soul to pass through the mist and into the shadowed embrace of eternity. On the western wall of the chamber, partly hidden behind a column, there was a smaller, almost overlooked panel. It depicted a solitary figure seated on a low stone bench, holding a golden cup. The painter had lavished extraordinary detail on the cup, its surface embossed with tiny spirals, lotus blooms, and coiled serpents that seemed ready to writhe in torchlight. The figure was not a king or a priest, at least not in the traditional iconography. His head was shaved, his linen robe plain, except for a narrow band of red at the hem. Yet the hieroglyphs above him gave him a title unusual for tomb art: the Shadowed Drinker. No other known inscription in Egypt uses this term. He sat apart from the ritual scenes, as though watching from the edges of time. His eyes, painted with kohl lines that extended unnaturally far, were fixed not on the viewer, but on the cup's dark contents. Inside the vessel, the artist had painted something more like a reflection than a liquid, a tiny image of the deceased, arms outstretched, as if trapped within the drink. This strange motif has puzzled scholars. Was the shadowed drinker a participant in the burial rite, or a supernatural figure? Some argue he was a seer or medium, drinking a concoction meant to channel the soul of the dead. Others believe he was an underworld guardian, consuming a symbolic essence to bind or guide the spirit. Fragments from papyri found in nearby ruins mention a forbidden preparation called the Breath of Osiris, a drink infused with lotus resin, fermented pomegranates, and traces of opium poppy. It was said to open the drinker's mind to voices beyond the veil. The cup in the painting might represent this potent elixir. Chemical tests on a small flake of gold leaf fallen from the wall revealed microscopic residues of plant alkaloids, faint but real. This tantalizing evidence suggests that the scene might not be symbolic at all, but a faithful record of an actual ritual, one in which an appointed individual literally ingested the spirit-laden vapors or liquid to act as an intermediary. What makes the panel unsettling is the detail of the shadows. Behind the drinker, shapes rise from the floor like elongated hands stretching toward him but never touching. The pigment in these shadows was mixed with powdered obsidian, absorbing light and creating a depth the eye can't easily escape. Some researchers think the artist was hinting at forces unseen, perhaps the restless dead, perhaps something older. Standing before it now, one feels the tension between gold and darkness, between the beauty of the cup and the danger of its contents. In the flicker of ancient firelight, the scene must have seemed alive, the gold gleaming, the shadows swaying, the figure raising the cup to lips that might speak the last words the dead would ever hear in the land of the living. Beyond the shadowed drinker's panel, a narrow doorway led to a smaller, colder chamber. The air here was different. Still, but not silent. Every footstep stirred a faint, hollow whisper, as if the stone itself remembered voices. The walls were smoother than in the main tomb, their surfaces interrupted only by narrow vertical recesses, like book niches. But instead of papyrus scrolls, each recess held a thin wooden tablet. The tablets were weathered, many split or warped from centuries underground, yet faint carvings remained, lines of hieratic script rather than the more formal hieroglyphs. These were names, hundreds of them, each preceded by a short mark in the shape of an open eye. No two marks were identical. Some eyes were calm, others seemed to weep, some were slashed through with a single stroke. Curiously, none of these names matched those in the official king's registry or temple archives. They were uncounted names, individuals absent from public records, their existence acknowledged only here in the dark heart of a noble's tomb. Scholars have debated for decades, were these forgotten servants, enemies, or something else? One theory holds that these were the chosen witnesses of the burial rites, their names preserved in secret because their participation was not sanctioned by the high priesthood. Another, more haunting suggestion is that these names belonged to souls bound to guard the tomb, perhaps sacrificed and ritually erased from the world above to live eternally in service. In the farthest corner of the chamber, one tablet stood apart. It was painted black, the only one not carved from pale sycamore. The inscription upon it was longer than the others, spilling over the edges as if the scribe had been desperate to include every syllable. At its center was an unfamiliar symbol, two crossed feathers over a closed mouth. When the tablet was first examined in modern times, faint traces of gold leaf clung to the symbol, as though it had once been the most important mark in the room. The translated text tells of a man who spoke the last truth and was sealed for it. His name, if it was his, has been partially lost, the wood cracked where the final signs would have been. Egyptian law during certain dynasties held that erasing a name condemned a soul to wander without form, unable to reach the afterlife. That this tablet preserves almost all of the name, yet deliberately obscures the end, suggests an act of punishment combined with preservation, a paradox meant to both honor and exile. The atmosphere here is heavy. Visitors often remark on a sensation of being watched, even when alone. One archaeologist reported hearing a faint tapping, like fingers on wood when copying the inscriptions. Another swore the gold flecks on the black tablet shifted when he looked away, as if the symbol was breathing. Whether these uncounted names were victims, accomplices, or something in between, the chamber stands as a testament to a hidden network within ancient funerary culture. People whose roles were vital enough to record, yet dangerous enough to hide forever.
A narrow passage wound away from the chamber of the uncounted names, its walls damp with beads of condensation, though no water source was visible. The air was colder here, and with each step, a pale haze began to gather at ankle height. By the time the passage widened into another chamber, the mist had risen to the knees, curling like pale serpents around the legs. This was the chamber of the ritual of the mist. At least that is what later translations of the wall reliefs suggest. Along the walls, carved in low relief, was a sequence of figures engaged in an unfamiliar ceremony. Men in long hooded linen robes poured water from tall jars onto heated stone basins, releasing billows of steam. In these depictions, the steam did not rise naturally. It seemed to coil and form shapes. Human faces, animals, and in one striking panel, the image of a great open door. In the center of the room stood a shallow stone pool, its surface lined with black basalt tiles. The edges were inscribed with protective spells, but unlike most funerary magic, these were inverted, written backwards, as if meant to repel not intruders, but those attempting to leave. One inscription, painstakingly reconstructed by Egyptologists, reads, "Only through the breath of the hidden waters shall the soul pass unbroken to the field of reeds. Let the mists remember the shape of the traveler, so that he may not wander as a shadow." What exactly breath of the hidden waters referred to remains uncertain. Some believe it was a poetic name for the steam created in this chamber, which may have been infused with aromatic resins, frankincense, or rarer substances imported from Punt. Others suspect a more esoteric meaning, that the mist itself was a medium, a bridge between the worlds, capable of carrying the imprint of a person's essence. A curious feature of the chamber is its acoustics. Even a whisper near the pool echoes with uncanny clarity, as though repeated by a second, unseen voice. During the initial excavation, one archaeologist, already unnerved by the mist that stubbornly clung to the floor, reported that when he spoke aloud the name of one of the uncounted, he heard his own words return to him, but in a voice not his own. It is possible that this effect was due to a deliberate architectural design. The curved ceiling, the exact proportions of the stone pool, and the placement of the wall niches may have been intended to amplify and distort sound. But in the charged atmosphere of the tomb, it is not hard to imagine why ancient priests and witnesses would have felt they were truly conversing with the dead. Fragments of pottery found here suggest the use of specific concoctions, a mix of lotus oil, honey, and ground hematite, perhaps to be poured into the basins to create mists of varying density and color. Combined with flickering torchlight, the effect would have been both mesmerizing and terrifying. An ideal setting for a rite that bound the living, the dead, and whatever lay between. At the far wall is a relief unlike any other in the tomb. A depiction of the deceased noble not lying in a sarcophagus, but standing within a frame of mist, one hand raised in greeting, the other holding a sealed jar. Above him, the inscription does not name him as Lord or Master, but as He Who Walks Twice. The implication is unsettling. This was no ordinary send-off to the afterlife. It might have been a promise or a threat of return.
The last torch flickered in the passageway behind you, its glow swallowed by the cold, dry breath of the tomb. The air still carried the scent of ancient resins and faded lotus petals from the burial chamber, a reminder of the rituals you had just witnessed. Stepping out into the open, the world shifted. The sun had long set, and the Nile lay before you, a sheet of silver undulating under the quiet breath of the night. A soft breeze brushed your skin, warmer than the tomb's shadows, but cool with the whisper of the river. In the distance, a slow, rhythmic drumbeat throbbed through the air, each note fading into the soft lap of waves against the wooden hulls moored at the riverbank. Here, under the eternal Egyptian sky, night was not simply the absence of day. It was a realm in its own right. The moon, full and ancient as the gods themselves,
bathed the world in pale gold, making every ripple on the water glimmer like molten metal. The palm fronds along the banks swayed gently, their silhouettes etched against the starlit horizon. Villages lay scattered in pools of lamplight, where families shared the evening meal, the smoke of their fires curling upward to merge with the fragrance of jasmine and papyrus. Somewhere farther downriver, a lone fisherman cast his net, the arc of the rope glistening as it caught the moonlight. The Nile had seen every joy and sorrow of this land, the coronations of kings, the whispered conspiracies of queens, the silent funerals of forgotten nobles. Now it cradled the night like a keeper of memory. Standing there, you could almost hear the echoes of voices from 1,000 years ago, carried on the same breeze that brushed your cheek. And yet, the night promised more. This was not the end of the journey, but a passage into the heart of Egypt's most intimate secrets, moments of devotion, longing, and transformation beneath the watchful gaze of the moon. The tomb was behind you, but its mysteries had followed, dissolving into the water's reflection, waiting to be rediscovered in the rituals of the Nile night. The further you walked along the riverbank, the more the air changed. The crisp coolness of the Nile's breath mingled with something warmer, more intoxicating, the scent of night-blooming flowers that awakened only when the sun was gone. Lotus buds, closed tight through the day, now spread their pale petals, releasing a fragrance so delicate it seemed made for the gods alone. Clusters of blue water lilies floated at the edges of the current, their perfume mingling with the sweet, resinous smoke drifting from small clay burners set along the shore. Villagers had placed them there as offerings, not just to the river, but to the unseen spirits that moved through the night. Each wisp of smoke curled upward, then vanished into the sky, carrying with it whispered prayers for love, health, and safe passage into tomorrow. On the terraces above the bank, garlands of jasmine and hibiscus hung from carved wooden beams, swaying slightly in the breeze. Women with dark, coal-lined eyes wove more flowers into long chains, their fingers moving with practiced grace, murmuring blessings as they worked. Somewhere among them, a young girl sang an old hymn to Hathor, goddess of love and beauty, her voice rising and falling like the slow ripple of the Nile itself. In the stillness, every sound felt magnified. The soft splash of a fish breaking the surface, the faint rustle of reeds, the gentle clink of pottery as someone poured cool water into a bronze basin. The scents grew richer, wrapping around you like a silken veil. It was not just the aroma of flowers, it was the smell of the earth cooling after the heat of the day, of wet papyrus reeds, of oil lamps burning fragrant myrrh. This night air, perfumed and alive, was more than pleasant, it was sacred. In the beliefs of ancient Egypt, fragrances could carry the soul's intention to the gods.
priests burned kifi, a blend of honey, wine, and aromatic herbs to bridge the mortal and divine realms. Here, on the river bank, that bridge felt tangible. Every breath you took seemed to draw you deeper into a world where the boundaries between life and afterlife, waking and dream, had dissolved entirely.
Midnight approached, and with it came a pulse in the air, deep, steady, and resonant. The first beat of the drum was like a slow heartbeat, echoing across the dark waters of the Nile. It rolled through the reeds, slipped between the flowering branches, and reached you as though it had been waiting for you all along. The drums were not random music, they were a summons. In ancient Egypt, the drum was more than an instrument. It was a vessel of command, a bridge between the human and the divine. The priests of the temple would strike the skins in precise rhythms, each pattern calling to a different spirit, each vibration aligning the soul with the cosmic order. Along the riverbank, shadowy figures began to gather, their linen garments glowing faintly in the moonlight. The scent of incense thickened, and the smoke curled like ghostly hands toward the stars. A narrow procession formed, led by a high priest carrying a bronze sistrum, its shimmering sound weaving through the heavy bass of the drums. Behind him, acolytes held tall, flaming torches, their light dancing over painted faces and polished amulets. They moved toward a low platform by the water's edge, the place where, it was said, the veil between this world and the next was thinnest. The drums quickened, matched by the low hum of voices chanting words older than the pyramids. The language was nearly lost, yet its meaning seemed instinctively clear. An invocation for protection, a blessing for the living, and safe passage for the souls who had departed. Every beat seemed to reverberate through your bones. The sound was hypnotic, almost physical, as though it pressed against your chest, sinking your breath with the rhythm of the earth. When the chant reached its peak, the drums suddenly stopped, leaving a silence so deep it felt like the stars had leaned closer to listen. And then, softly, a single voice rose in the darkness, a woman's song, fragile yet unshakable, carrying the essence of the Nile night. It was both a farewell and a promise, a sound that seemed to promise that nothing in this world or the next was ever truly lost. The chanting faded, but the air remained heavy with devotion. Beneath the silver light of the full moon, the high priest stepped forward, holding a shallow alabaster bowl. Within it lay a perfect white lotus, its petals trembling slightly, as though aware of the sacred moment it had been chosen for. The river breeze carried the flower's fragrance, mingling it with the last traces of incense, creating an aroma that seemed to belong to neither earth nor sky. From the procession, attendants emerged carrying woven reed baskets. Each basket brimmed with offerings, dates as dark as polished obsidian, figs swollen with sweetness, and small clay jars sealed with beeswax containing precious oils of myrrh and lotus. These were not mere gifts. They were the ancient language of gratitude and remembrance, placed before the gods to ensure harmony between worlds. The priest knelt by the water's edge and, with a practiced motion, released the lotus into the Nile. The flower floated slowly, its reflection shimmering under the moon. Behind him, the attendants poured thin streams of oil into the parent, their golden trails spreading like liquid sunlight across the dark surface. Every drop was a message, a silent promise that life, like the river, would always find its way forward. Then came the moment reserved for the most sacred of offerings, a small bronze figurine of the god Khnum, the divine potter who shaped human life from clay. It was lowered into the river with deliberate reverence, vanishing into the water as if returning to the hands of creation itself. On the shore, the people bowed low, their foreheads nearly touching the sand. The moonlight washed over them, turning the scene into a living painting, the Nile glittering like molten silver, the desert beyond cloaked in endless shadow. In that instant, the division between mortal and divine seemed to dissolve, leaving only the shared breath of the night. The night deepened, and with it the Nile began to speak, not in words, but in a language older than the temples, older than the pyramids, the language of water touching stone, of wind gliding over ripples, of unseen currents carrying stories downstream. Those who stayed until the end of the ceremony swore they could hear it, a low, steady murmur, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. Along the riverbank, the last flickers of torchlight shimmered, mirrored in the black silk of the water. The moon had climbed high, its glow draping the desert in silver and shadow. The offerings, the lotus, the oil, the bronze god were gone from sight, yet their presence lingered in the air, a quiet promise between humanity and the divine. The high priest remained kneeling, his eyes closed, palms resting on the sand. In the stillness, he imagined the voices of generations past, farmers who once carried water in clay jars, queens who bathed in perfumed basins, children who had run barefoot along this same shore. All of them now part of the Nile's memory, their joys and sorrows dissolved into its endless flow. Somewhere far upstream, reeds swayed, whispering to the wind. Downstream, the great delta waited, where the river would meet the sea and vanish into eternity. And here, in this stretch of moonlit water, the night felt suspended between worlds, the mortal and the eternal, the now and the forever. The priest rose at last, his white robes brushing against the sand. He turned to the gathered crowd and spoke only one sentence, his voice carrying like a prayer. As long as the Nile flows, we are never forgotten. The people bowed once more and slowly dispersed, leaving the river to its own thoughts. In the end, there was only the desert wind, the quiet lap of the water, and the moon's pale reflection, the eternal glow of the Nile nights, keeping watch over all who dreamed along its shores.